Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video we're going to be going over the latest letter from the producer live part, 47 that came out of the North American Fan Festival from Las Vegas. Again, apologies for the audio quality on this video. You might hear a little bit of what sounds like buzzing in the background. There's go-karts outside the hotel, so apologies for that, but had to get this out because this is important stuff, and I'm already a day late on getting this video posted. So the producer live letter number 47 was part 1 of our patch 4.5 preview. We got to see all the expected content, stuff that's part of the scheduled releases, new dungeon, new Evilise, they get to talk about all the normal stuff. We also got a deeper look into the Blue Mage job, which we are probably going to be doing a standalone video on, just so I can give my full thoughts, because this video is already going to be long, so we don't really need it to be that much longer, because Blue Mage I can make a 40-minute video about alone if I wanted to. So anyway, I've got some pictures here that I took of the event on Twitter. I'm going to be just scrolling through these, so you're going to see, I'm going to click out of this occasionally because it's a whole thread of pictures that I shared. So this was just the opening one. Immediately, we move on into patch 4.5's title, and that is going to be a Requiem for Heroes. Now, based on the mood of the trailer, we can kind of tell sort of where we're going to be diving into with this one, but we're going to be setting up the expansion, and of course, it's going to be broken down into a part 1 and part 2 in terms of the story that we are going to be experiencing. Now, this patch is going to start becoming available in early January, which is about the expected time. We figured they'd skip Christmas and New Year's probably in regards to the actual timing of the patch. So early January for Requiem of Heroes Part 1, and then I believe it said late March. I have a screenshot here, so I'm going to just scroll down to it. There you go. Late March 2019 for Part 2. Part 2 is also going to be including stuff like Eureka, the conclusion of Hildebrand, which I've got some things to say about a little bit later, but they're a little spoilerific, so I don't want to go too crazy on this one right here. Looks like I gotta scroll up a little bit. Looks like I started a new thread by accident right here, I guess. No, that was weird. It just wasn't showing me all of the things. Regardless, some new screenshots from patch 4.5 story. Alice, speaking of Maxima, who is completely absent in patch 4.4 despite being in the art for the actual patch. And we know what happened in both 4.3 and 4.4. This is becoming a great deal more important towards the way that the story is going to be panning out going into 5.0. And then, of course, we have a very spoilerific picture of a certain Solace from, he's the first Emperor. If you were paying attention to the opening keynote, or if you've played some of the recent patches, you would kind of know a little bit more about this guy that we're not going to dive too deep into right now. Just a couple of screenshots that we're going to be dealing with in patch 4.5. Of course, with the addition of the new main story quests, both in Part 1 and Part 2, we are going to have new side story quest lines. We are going to be wrapping up the Four Lords, which we have already confirmed as of this live letter, that Seiryu will be the final trial, and of course, Seiryu Extreme, going into the finale of the Four Lords. Really curious to see if Koryu gets any sort of mention, or if we get, I think he's going to be a solo trial, or a solo instance at this point, but we'll just have to wait and see. We have a few screenshots for the Four Lords finale as well, so we'll make sure that we get into those as we scroll through some of the images here. Also, even further, Hildebrand Ventures. Now, I said I was going to talk about this a little bit, but I don't want to say too much. I did get to experience the Yojimbo battle trial, and I don't want to talk about it in this video, only because I don't want to have to separate anything for spoilers. But to me, it seems almost guaranteed. Yojimbo, it will actually be a trial that is directly tied to Hildebrand. I would be very surprised if he's not directly tied to Hildebrand, just with what actually takes place in the battle itself. But I gotta say, I'm really looking forward to the finale of Hildebrand, only because I kind of miss Hildebrand having trials. He had 3 trials back in A Realm Reborn, and the reason they stopped doing them was because they didn't want people to have to complete the stories, which is why I'm kind of a little thinking maybe they won't directly tie it to Hildebrand. Maybe they'll just make it standalone, but it has tie-ins to Hildebrand. Would make a lot of sense. But considering they straight up said during this live letter that it would be Hildebrand spoils if you've already done the Yojimbo battle, the battle challenge that's actually at FanFest, that, I can't help but feel that there's no way it's anything but that. So we won't talk about it too much. I'll talk about it in another video, one that's, a little bit more prepared for spoilers regarding what actually looks like it's about to happen at the end of the Hildebrand adventures. Also, some more pictures of the Four Lords. You have Soroban and Genbu here. Looks to be some sort of prayer that's taking place, almost like he's, it almost looks like, Genbu's ether is going away. So this might be more of a sad moment than a happy moment. And then also another flashback of Tenzin. You can see Byakko and Suzaku behind him. This is probably the cutscene that explains the origin of Tenzin meeting Seiryu. This is something that we've gotten for both Suzaku and Byakko, so it makes sense that as more time has gone on, they've added more of the images, so Seiryu was probably the last of the Four Lords to join Tenzin's little collection of animal friends. So not much more to say about that. Also, Blue Mage, of course, we're going to dive into this a little bit more. We're also going to do a standalone video on it. Blue Mage exclusive content, the Masked Carnival, new job quest, and a bunch of other new information coming soon. The new dungeon we're going to be getting, because it is an odd-numbered patch, it is a single instance dungeon. It's going to be the Gimlet Dark, and it is going to be part of the main scenario quests. And this is a little screenshot of it. It was specifically mentioned that if you have seen the 5.0 trailer, that this should be very familiar to you. So hopefully it is. Moving forward, we have the new Alliance raid. The Return to Evil East is going to be wrapping up in the Orban Monastery. That should be something that tactics players are very, very familiar with, because that is a very important location there. And on top of that, they showed us some of the pictures of the armor. I wasn't able to get good pictures of them, but you can already kind of tell who it is. Balthier's armor is going to be one of the rewards available, because he is, he's got the gun, I'd have to imagine, and he's holding the gun there, that is the machinist, or the ranged armor in particular. They were planning on putting Balthier into the story for Return to Evil East. They said it just didn't kind of work out that way, like with what they wanted to do with the story altogether. They did say there will be one very important character. They alluded to this in the opening keynote as well, that maybe a certain bunny character, a certain tease for a new race of some kind that we might be seeing in the Return to Evil East series. Yeah, something, maybe, I don't know, I couldn't think of anyone off the top of my head. Also, they confirmed that if you collect all the mounts from the various trials, Tsukiyomi and the Four Lords and whatnot, that the mount you'll be receiving for this expansion is a Kyubi. Again, not a great picture, but the Kyubi mount is going to be something that a lot of people are looking to get. So if you've been a collector of the previous Primal or Trial mounts and you have them all in your collection, I'm sure that Kyubi will shortly be in your collection as well. Moving on, we got a quick screenshot of the Orban Monastery. They made it seem like this isn't actually the monastery, or at least, that's what they said. He's like, oh, is that the Orban Monastery? Is it not? Teasing that, with all of the Return to Evil East series, it's constantly been a matter of us seeing one thing, then exploring and discovering it was something entirely different to discover the true history of Evil East and what it means in the realm of Final Fantasy XIV. Here's just another reminder, Seiryu, the Wreath of Snakes and Wreath of Snakes Extreme for the new 4.5 trial. We also have a quick picture of his arena. He did make mention that there are rails, and that rails are meant to be broken. So expect to be able to fall off this, as if that was ever really going to be a surprise. We confirmed the fourth zone, the final zone for the Forbidden Land of Eureka, Hydados. And just a quick screenshot of it, obviously that being the Greek word for water. And you can see the castle in the distance. No doubt that's probably going to be what the public dungeon that they've been speaking about is. They had a few additional comments regarding the final zone for Eureka. The public dungeon is going to be a high difficulty content meant to be enjoyed by a large number of people, and it's going to be a final challenge that's available after completing the scenario in Eureka. It's not something they usually do for 14 in terms of difficulty, and this will come closer to Part 2 in patch 4.5. So, it just sounds more and more like the Diadem emergency missions. Hopefully they've learned a little bit about, what worked about those, what didn't work about them, specifically player interest. With Eureka, I don't think it's going to be difficult getting everyone in the zone interested in visiting the public dungeon, assuming people are a high enough level to actually contribute. So I think that is going to play quite a bit of a role in them, introducing this public dungeon again. But we still have to see how it's executed. I have very, very, not great memories of trying to get enough people together for the emergency missions in Diadem, both the amount of time that was available, and actually, what people were expected to do inside in terms of what the fail conditions were for the actual encounter itself. So just have to see. It also says it's a dungeon, not necessarily just an encounter, which I guess the emergency mission was technically multiple encounters, but that's whatever, it's a technicality. Moving on, we will be getting an update in patch 4.5 for PvP. We'll be getting a new PvP a new PvP map for the Rival Wings. It's called the Hidden Gorge, and while it is ultimately Rival Wing style in that you are going to be attacking the towers to get to the other person's base, there's going to be a train that goes through the middle, a goblin-type train, as we can see in this picture right here. You don't want to get run over by that train, but that train is going to be vital to some of the happenings on the map itself, and is going to be a key part in how you actually go about winning in these maps. Taking a quick look at the map itself, one of the biggest issues with the original Rival Wings map was the sheer imbalance of the map itself, and that one half of the map was way easier to attack than the other. Taking a quick glance at this, it looks like they may have evened that out a little bit. There's a little bit of details on the bottom left that I don't think we're getting to really look at in their entirety. But that being said, this does look like at least a somewhat better balanced map than the previous map altogether. Curious what the train's actually going to be, and of course I'll be giving this map a try like I did the original Rival Wings, but I don't hold too much anticipation for it, only because I saw what eventually devolved with Rival Wings things in terms of player participation, and it was just super unfortunate that it couldn't hold on with the rule set that it was trying to utilize for much longer than its initial implementation. The Gold Saucer will be getting some updates as well. There's going to be a large-scale new content added to it that they're going to be going over in patch 4.5 Live Letter Part 2, which is going to be taking place just before Christmas. I have no doubt this is Blitzball. I'll be just straight up honest about it. They've spoken about it all expansion. It'd be one other thing for them to try and keep people subscribed throughout the end of the expansion. We've all expected it as much as I've dreaded it personally. I don't think it's going to be snowboarding or the battle arena or any of that. I feel really confident that it is ultimately going to be Blitzball. So we'll make sure to make fun of me for this in a few weeks when it gets spoken about at the next letter from the producer live. Also, a new gate is being added, Air Force One. It is a rail shooter style minigame. I don't know how that's going to work in terms of being a gate, because gates have a lot of people in them. So I guess, leap of faith, technically you act independently all of another, and all the gates got to do that. But hope it doesn't get too bogged down with too many people being present at the gate all at once. But it's good because I liked Leap of Faith. I liked that it was a new gate that added a really new element to the Gold Saucer. Gold Saucer's always had jump puzzles, but this was something that was, a lot more effort, a lot more polish was put into it. And it was something I really appreciated, regardless of it being a jump puzzle. So new content, new gates for this. I'm glad to see them overall treating the Gold Saucer with a little bit of respect. It was introduced in patch 2.51, I believe, initially. And it kind of just died super fast because they didn't really treat it with much respect. They gave it Lords of Romanian eventually, but that was about it. And I think maybe that's why they distanced themselves from it for a while. So to get things like rail shooters, the jump puzzles, they're really kind of, I feel like, embracing what the Gold Saucer was in Final Fantasy VII, more so now than they did when it initially released. So I'm hoping that they can continue to find new and exciting things to add to it, as well as new rewards that are worth working towards. And I feel like they've been doing better at that as well. So looking forward to it. Not looking forward to Blitzball, but if it is Blitzball, which I'm pretty sure it will be, we will still be doing videos on it just because why not, right? Why not at this point? The world visit system is going to be added towards the end of 4.5, and the rest of this half of the live letter was really just kind of going over how the world visit system was going to be incorporated, what restrictions it was going to be using. And in case you missed the opening keynote, the world visit system is the ability to, from your server, teleport to another server on your data center and play with people directly on that server. You could do open world activities like hunts or treasure maps. You could also just choose to go there and hang out, maybe visit a friend's house that they've been working on, without having to make a brand new character or server transfer, any of that. But there's a whole bunch of rules and regulations, most of which I think make perfect sense for what they've described. And overall, the system feels like they really did consider almost all of the options. And they even have considered some of the restrictions they have in place and working on lifting those because they really feel like it should be something that's possible to do, which we'll get into here in a second. So in order to teleport to another server, we also said this in the opening keynote, you do need to go to one of the main aetherites and Limsa Elementa, Gridania or Ul'dah. And then when you click them, it'll give you an option to do a world visit. It'll ask you which server you want to visit, and then it will teleport you to that server, to the same aetherite that's on that server. Now, as we scroll down, let's see here. Yeah, menu option. Now, one of the most important things for me is I was worried this was going to treat it like a duty, almost like there would be a time limit, or I was worried about what happens if you disconnect from the game. Do I just get thrown back? Because then that kind of screws map parties over. There's a bunch of problems that come with that. I was glad to see that there's no time limit for staying, and you will also not be removed from that server should you log out or disconnect. So if I'm on Gilgamesh, and let's say I want to visit, I'm trying to think because they moved, with the data center moving, which we'll talk about in a little bit. I'm trying to think of another, Sargatanas. Say I'm on Gilgamesh and I got friends on Sargatanas, right? I got a friend who wants to do treasure maps on Sargatanas. I can use the world visit system to go over there and do those treasure maps with him. Now, while we're doing them, let's say I disconnect from the game. My number one fear is that would kick me back to Gilgamesh and thus kind of ruin the whole thing. It won't. I'll just log back onto the game and I'll still be on Sargatanas. Until I choose to go back to Gilgamesh, pretty much, I will remain on Sargatanas. And that's exactly how the system needed to work. So I'm glad they got that right off the bat, because that's the single most important thing. Now, there are, of course, restrictions of when you go to these places so you don't screw with some of the things that are there. And also, some of them is a matter of data retrieval for the game itself. Retainers cannot be hired or summoned because they are, I think when you place them up on the boards, usually, I think they're tied. Well, actually, that's not even a big deal here because of the second restriction. Regardless, it's just the retainers can't be called or hired when you're on a server that is not part of your home world. Items cannot be put up for sale on the market, specifically not put up for sale. So you cannot flood items into another market, but you could go there, check the prices, and maybe make a purchase from the other servers as well. So just a matter of, you could put money in their economy, but you can't take the money out of the economy. That's kind of the idea with these servers. They even considered doing a data center wide market board, but from a technical standpoint, there's proving to be quite a few issues with that. So this was the best alternative they had, especially if you do want to actually transfer home servers, so you can utilize the market board and its prices on that other server. You can at least do some scouting first without making a new character or doing any of the other fancy stuff. You can also not buy housing or apartments on another server. That was just another key thing they had to make sure. You can go to the housing areas to visit your friends. You just can't purchase anything there, which is exactly how it needed to work. Most free company features are not available. For example, free company buffs would be something that you wouldn't benefit from when visiting another server, but you can still use your free company chat. Which is among the more important things, but kind of makes this next point a little bit, bittersweet. Link shells are not available. Any of your server-specific link shells that you're in will not work while you're on a guest server. You're visiting another server. If you're in a cross-world link shell, those will still work, but that's about it. And I feel like they haven't provided enough support for cross-world link shells for that to really be in kind of an adequate way. But maybe now with this, people will start leaning towards using it a little bit more, since you can use it to coordinate things on various servers as opposed to just talking to each other. It's a bit of a drawback not having the link shells, because there are things that you may want to be able to communicate with. Maybe you have a static that uses a link shell instead of FC chat, or maybe you have hunt groups or things like that. But it is what it is. You're making that decision, and it is like there's got to be restrictions in place. That was just one that was the only bittersweet restriction that I felt was on there. Moving on to the next stuff, the world transfer system. It's kind of its name changed because you can visit now. It's the home world transfer system, so you can change what your home world is. So all those things you can't do in visiting other servers, obviously you can still do on your home world, and that's kind of the remaining benefit of doing a world transfer. Let's see what else here. For company actions, another set of restrictions. Eternal bonding ceremonies cannot be scheduled or attended. Now, the scheduled thing I understand not being able to do. Attending was one of the other bittersweet points here. However, Yoshida did say that he thinks it's absolutely a priority to make sure that you can attend eternal bonding, because one of the big things is now you should be able to invite people who are on your data center from other servers to your eternal bonding. Now, it's not a feature that is like crazy used. People still use it, somewhat frequently, but it's not like a super frequent thing. So this is something that doesn't really have a whole lot of implications, and there's no reason this restriction should exist from a moral standpoint. So it's just a technicality, and they are making it a priority to make sure you can attend eternal bonding ceremonies on other servers. Moogle delivery service cannot be accessed. You can see if you have mail. You just can't accept the mail. You have to go back to your home world in order to do that. You cannot use unspoiled or legendary gathering points. This is obviously to make sure that you don't just teleport between servers to get unspoiled and legendary nodes, something I totally understand them doing. Cannot purchase tickets for the jumbo. Same deal, so you don't buy jumbo cackpots across your entire data center on just the same character. And Lords of Verminion Triple Triad tournaments cannot be entered. That is, again, to make sure that you don't go from... So these are all restrictions to make sure you don't go server to server on your data center and just enter all of these to just reap the rewards across all the servers. So totally understand all those last ones. Just most of the restrictions here make perfect sense. There's only a couple that are a little unfortunate, and those aren't even really, I guess, like the biggest deals. Let me see, why is it that it cuts off again? Let me just scroll up. It's so weird that it's doing that. Let's see, 4.5 features. Luckily I made this whole huge thread, so I just need to scroll up. Moving on to the next 4.5 features. I feel like I probably missed a sentence or two here. Attending a wedding. Yeah, there you go. So next thing we're getting is data center expansion. Now what this means is they're going to be adding a new data center to both North America and Europe. North America is getting the Crystal data center, and Europe is getting the Light data center. Now on top of this, they're going to be moving around the distribution of servers on those data centers. And this was one of the more, I guess, controversial points, because you totally understand why they're doing it. Why they say, they actually said that it was very tough to come to the decision to, move servers around for this, because they understood exactly what was going to happen. They did it knowing that it had to be done, but not really wanting to do it. So, what basically happened is previously North America had 2 data centers. Now it has 3, but it has the same number of servers. So all they're doing is they're taking the servers that were on the 2 data centers and spreading them out across all 3, which means that you may have friends that were on one server that you are no longer on the same data center with, and thus either one of you has the data transfer or just you have to stay in contact outside of the game because you just don't have the option to play with that person anymore because they got moved in terms of data centers. Europe's the same way. They only had one data center with a bunch of servers. Now they have two, so they were all split. And for Europe, they're even adding a new server to each of the data centers, which I think Europe actually is in constant need, I feel, of new servers. For Europe, I feel like it may not be as bad, only because Europe is made up of a lot of different countries, a lot of different languages, and they said they tried to take that somewhat into consideration with Europe. They wanted to make sure that data centers were a little bit more, affiliated with different regions of Europe. So, like, if French players are trying to find other French players, the community knowledge would be, okay, these are the servers to go to. This is the data center to go to. You could have someone in Germany, maybe they are in a different one. So it makes a little more sense for Europe, and I feel like North America is really the one that gets the more, a little more screwed in the sense. I get it, but it doesn't make it any more acceptable. Let me see if I can just click this and go down again. So here's North America. So I want you to look at this and determine where you are now. For example, Gilgamesh, they also spelled Ether wrong. Gilgamesh, Sarkatana, Siren, Midgard's Armor, Genova, Fairy, Cactar, and Adamantoise were all on Ether and are still on Ether. On Primal, Behemoth, Excalibur, Exodus, Famfrit, Hyperion, Lamia, Leviathan, and Ultros were on Primal, remain on Primal. Crystal is getting Brynhildr, Diablos, and Malboro. Those were previously on the Primal data center, if I'm not mistaken. And Crystal is getting Balmung, Coral, Goblin, Mateus, and Solera, which were all previously on Ether. So one of the biggest things we all expected them to do with this was to move Balmung to its own data center. They kind of look at Adamantoise and Gilgamesh. I think those are the two most populated ones on Ether, kind of as like the strongest points. Primal, Etsy, Behemoth, and Excalibur carry pretty well. Actually, Leviathan's been doing really well. So there's a lot of strong servers, but having Gilgamesh and Balmung on top of some of the other servers on Ether didn't really make a lot of sense. We also had Mateus and Zolera, which are very often some of the least populated servers. So it just sucks because we have the ability to visit servers now, and then they split us up. So I feel like I guess I just don't understand the technical standpoint as well as they probably explained it. Because if we have all these servers, we have the ability to transfer between them. I guess the idea is they want the overall congestion across the entire duty system, across the entire data center. They want that split into three. It's not about just adding more servers so that way there's less congestion on the main servers. It's about the sheer number of people utilizing things like the NPCs, like Ralban at the beginning of the expansion, people trying to use the duty finder at the beginning of an expansion. So if that's the case, like, I get it. It's just, it's again, I've used this term a few times. It's bittersweet because it makes a lot of sense, but it's also not something we want. It's just something that needs to happen. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. So we kind of just got to accept it, figure out what our situation is, if we can still play with our friends, if we need to maybe find another solution for it. That's up to us at this point. For EU, again, I don't understand these arrangements as well as I do NA, so I'm just going to say what they said, which is regarding the regions that people play in from Europe, and this should reflect it a little bit more. And Europe is always in need of new servers. I feel like their servers get way more packed and have way more issues than ours. So hopefully, with the number of times chaos has gone down, hopefully this helps relieve that a little bit. I'm doubtful, but I'm hoping for it at the very least. On top of that, with the redistribution of the servers, they're going to be opening up things like a free transfer for a couple of weeks, all characters. They're also going to be, and it's going to be free of charge. They're also going to be doing stuff to make sure that if you do move, obviously one of the biggest problems with moving servers is housing. You don't want to give up that house because odds are there's no plot waiting for you when you get to the next server. They're going to make sure the maximum gil that may be retained when transferring to another world will be 1 billion, just under 1 billion. They said normally they wouldn't do that, but they just have it in place. I can't remember the exact reason they gave. On top of that, if you own an estate on the server that you're leaving, you'll get 100% of the original purchasing price of your plot back. You'll also receive additional gil based on kind of expected compensation for furnishings. 3 million gil is the compensation for an estate, and 500,000 gil is for the apartment, on top of course, the cost of the plot itself. So you spent 50 million on a house, and then you get 53 million back if you were leaving servers. If you bought an apartment, you get the 500,000 for the apartment plus 500,000 additional for the furnishings inside. For at least any of the furnishings you can't take with you, ones that are once they're placed, they're permanent kind of deal. Moving on, that was the end of the first half of the live letter. I don't want to spend too much time here in the second half, only because I do plan to make a standalone video about this stuff, but I will share at least my general opinions. So they teased Blue Mage at the end of the opening keynote, and a lot of us freaked out because there were a lot of terms on there we didn't understand. There was a lot of speculation going around the show floor for FanFest. I constantly people ask me, "What do you think limited job means?" I said there's two possibilities. One is that they plan on making it level 50, and then they kind of like string you along until the next expansion comes out, where like 4.5 it's level 50, then 4.51 is level 55, then 4.55 it's level 60, and eventually before Shadowbringers comes out, I thought that the job would be at 70 and then raised to level 80 cap. My other prediction was that this prediction actually came from a press conference that was held the night before, and I do still have to do a video on that. Someone had asked the usual question about content cycles and about, is there any plans to do new stuff? And they said, well, we do new stuff. We always keep that kind of base, but, we try things like Eureka and, deep dungeons. And then he said Blue Mage. So he made it sound like Blue Mage was designed as content and not so much as a job. So with that, I started thinking, okay, Blue Mage is just going to be its own thing, and it's not going to be a job you take in the raids. It's not going to be a job you take in the dungeons. That was the prediction that ended up coming true. So the Blue Mage job, it's going to be introduced in patch 4.5, and it's completely original. It's completely loyal to the classic Blue Mage. The look, the masquerade look, is very loyal to the Final Fantasy 3 and Final Fantasy 5 looks, and in fact, a lot of Blue Mages that aren't just straight up characters like Quistis and ones like that. And then on top of that, it's going to learn abilities from enemies and wield them against their foes with blue magic. Again, super loyal. It's up to interpretation depending on which game you're referring to, how that works. But that is the thing Blue Mage is known for. Then they got into the more nitty gritty. It's the first limited job, which they're going to explain here in a second. No base class expected. Starts at level 1. So that should have been our first sign, because starting at level 1 is not something they've done for a new job or a new class at all since Rogue back in 2.4. There's a level cap of 50 on release, which will be raised in the future. There's going to be new job quests explaining the story of a Blue Mage, and it is going to be using ranged magic, DPS gear, and role actions. So it's a new DPS, but that doesn't really matter when we explain what Blue Mage itself actually is. So Blue Mage will require you to have at least one Disciple of War Magic at level 50, complete the 2.0 main scenario quest, but it doesn't require any expansion. So if you're someone who's never played 14 before and you only picked up a Realm Reborn, Blue Mage is content that you can do. So please look forward to it. At least for now. When they raise the level cap past 50 for it, obviously if you want to go past level 50, it's going to be required probably for you to have the expansion. Now the unique characters is that it is designed for solo play. It is not just not designed for party play. It is not suited and pretty much not intended to be used in actual raiding or dungeon content in Final Fantasy XIV. Now it's not to say a Blue Mage can't group up with people. You can still join a party and do stuff. But it is not a job you are going to be maining in Final Fantasy XIV. And this is where we start explaining that Blue Mage is its own content, as opposed to Blue Mage being a new job that you will main. Sorry, I need a drink of water because I haven't been drinking enough water this weekend. So just something to wet the whistle real quick. So let's get into a little bit more about that. So Yoshida said that the reason they're doing this is because Blue Mage, everyone has a vision of Blue Mage. And Yoshida says that among all the things they've read and seen, people saying they could never do Blue Mage in an MMO because it needs to be like this. And a lot of that's a pretty common sentiment. A lot of people were willing to kind of take accept what they did with Red Mage, where Red Mage, we were used to it being Jack of all trades, Master of none, but they made it a Master of one to be in Final Fantasy XIV. With this, he said the fun of Blue Mage is collecting spells and straight up breaking the game, and that's going to cause balance issues in real content. It also makes it so that, if you don't go out and collect all the spells, which, however long it could take, no other job has to deal with this problem, you can just get kicked from a party, pretty much. You either have these insanely OP abilities that can just completely debilitate bosses, or you don't have them and you just get kicked. And yeah, I guess you could say that's sort of, not that doesn't already happen with jobs that are less desired, but it's a whole nother element on top that's more debilitating to the player experience than it is useful to the player experience. And that's why they decided to go with the solo play thing. And in fact, limited jobs altogether is a term that they plan on using for any job that people ask for, but it isn't really suited for MMOs. And a lot of those are, I guess, Final Fantasy XI ones. I mean, Blue Mage, obviously, people expected this to be a certain way. For
for some other ones that mentioned Beastmaster, for example, where you tame pets out in the wild. You could obviously imagine how that's going to go when and if Beastmaster ever comes out. And Puppet Master, one of my personal favorites, was another one that was named as jobs that, thematically may have issues with properly incorporating into MMOs and staying true to the identities of those jobs. So I kind of get it, and I'm going to reserve judgment on this Blue Mage thing, but I'm in the boat that I would have accepted them making consolidations for it to make it fit for MMOs, like they've done with some of the other jobs in Final Fantasy XIV. Now, there are going to be lots of restrictions. Yeah, you can't solo queue into pretty much anything. You can join instances as a fixed party, just by yourself. You can do that. However, for a lot of other stuff, you can't do anything without a preformed party of 7 or 8 people. Otherwise, you won't be able to join as Blue Mage. For example, any duties that require matchmaking, the duty roulette, PvP, and Deep Dungeon. Now, again, I hope that if you're in a fixed party, you can still do some of these things. Like Deep Dungeon, I get goes up to level 60. So I can understand why we can't really do that yet for it. But I hope that once it goes up to level 60, we can take Blue Mage in and use it for soloing Palace of the Dead stuff. Get it. I understand that that's a very niche community, but this job is designed for solo play, and soloing Palace of the Dead and Heaven on High are two of the more solo-centric things that those types of players have right now. And I feel like those are the kind of players who are going to enjoy Blue Mage in the first place. So I feel like Deep Dungeon is more of a level cap thing and less of a we don't want people doing it kind of thing. So I hope that they do allow it in Deep Dungeon once it hits a level 60 cap for Blue Mage altogether. So, that's going to be a rough one. So you're probably wondering how you level if you can't do any of those things. So Blue Mage is going to have some adjustments made so that it does not have to worry so much about its leveling process. For one, you're going to get a ton more experience points for defeating enemies out in the open world. So those of you who like kind of spending a lot of time in the open world and have always wondered why just killing monsters isn't it actually, by the way, it's super, super easy to level off killing random monsters out in the world. There's methods that you can use both to level solo and to level in a group that are efficient, but they're not as crazy instant gratification efficient as doing dungeons or duty roulette, especially because they've buffed them so much over the years. I remember I did 1 to 34 in A Realm Reborn in for 2.5 hours. With doing a power leveling trick that I made a video on. So this is going to be leveling pretty quick out in the open world, because they're going to get bonus EXP for defeating enemies in public areas. So it shouldn't be too crazy long to level one of these to 50. You can also form pre-made parties and do instance duties that way. And of course, if you have friends who want to play Blue Mage as well, you could take turns. Maybe 2 of you do Blue Mage, 1 of you, and then it's tank healer, and then you level with each other, and then you swap out every now and again. A little bit more teamwork, but I suspect most people just grind mobs out in the world, especially because you need to learn all of those skills as you're going through on Blue Mage as well. So, Then they have the Mass Carnival. Sorry, I'm still a little thirsty over here. So once you hit level 50 and you finish all the job quests, you can use the abilities that you've learned in the Mass Carnival, which is a Blue Mage exclusive instance. It is a solo-only instance as well. It's made up of 25 different stages, each of which are 3 rounds apiece. So there's 75 different sets of encounters inside of the Mass Carnival that Blue Mages can take on. Now, in order to take those on, you're just going to have to know which spells to learn and which spells to actually use, because you can only have a certain number of abilities active on Blue Mage at any given time. So we're going to get into all those limitations here in a little bit, but it's meant to be its own content, and this is what they meant by Blue Mage is its own content. I assume if they raise the level cap, they also would add more rounds into the Mass Carnival. I don't think anything's mentioned about rewards for this. I'd imagine they couldn't be much more than glamour, minions, maybe a mount, stuff like that, because what else could you, maybe there are certain skills you only learn by defeating certain rounds in the Mass Carnival. It's a possibility, but the only reason I would even suggest that is because they did say that down here when they explain about learning Blue Mage actions, they mentioned that defeating enemies after witnessing them performing certain techniques will allow you to learn. Oh, that was a different slide. I think it's this one. Through combat as quest rewards and via other means. So I feel like the Mass Carnival could be certain skills that you obtain from that one. But yeah, that's the Masked Carnival. Different enemies, different laying. And in terms of weaknesses, it's going to be a lot more classic Final Fantasy weaknesses, like flying enemies are weak to lightning, and they're probably immune to ground stuff because they're in the air. They're going to be making use of a lot more old school Final Fantasy style weaknesses, as opposed to now where everything's kind of works on everything. That's not going to be the case in the Blue Mage's Masked Carnival. As for learning skills, you don't need to be hit by the actions. You do need to witness the enemy using an action. And when you see the enemy use an action and then kill it, there's a chance that you learn the spell. You don't learn it every single time. And this is going to be part of the collection aspect of Blue Mage in terms of getting all the abilities. So you may need to defeat enemies multiple times. You might need to defeat multiple Cactars, multiple Shivas. You don't know. So there will be a total of 49 unique abilities upon the release of Blue Mage, of which you can equip 24 of them at a single time. So that's where the Masked Carnival comes in, only equipping the spells that you think will be absolutely suited to get you through the Masked Carnival. On top of that, they do consume MP, and more powerful abilities do consume more MP. So you may have times where you have two spells that have somewhat similar effects, but one of them is way stronger potency-wise, but also sucks your MP dry. Maybe there's situations in the Masked Carnival where you want to use the weaker one to preserve MP to, last the whole fight. And then there's times where maybe you want to use the super strong one to just kind of remove something as a threat immediately. So think about all that kind of stuff, and there's all going to play into the Masked Carnival overall. There's going to be a log of Blue Mage stuff. They also showed off some of the other abilities. We know Shiva. We know Thousand Needles from Cactars. We know what was the other one? We know Bad Breath from Malboros. We know Shiva. You have the arrow attack that she uses. Then you have he's fighting Garuda here, but he's using Ifrit's Eruption. So that's a different story altogether. So Ifrit's Eruption is another one. He also made mention that if you're fighting stronger versions of the same enemy, you may have a better chance of learning things. So for example, if you're fighting Ifrit in the level 20 version to learn Eruption, you may not have as good of an odds as if you're fighting Ifrit on Hard or Extreme. Obviously, with Ifrit on Hard and Extreme, you being only level 50, it does come with the obvious thing that you either need a really good soloing setup, which I'm sure people will come up with stuff like Mighty Guard and White Wind, or you need to go in with friends and do it like unsynced, or even do it synced, but just like do it all together. And then maybe take turns with each other and then help each other all learn your blue magic together so you can all go take on the Masked Carnival. Mighty Guard is going to be implemented. Right now, I think our Tier 2 tank LB is named Mighty Guard. They're going to be changing it to, what's the name of it? Stronghold. And Mighty Guard is going to be, they said Blue Mage was the more important place to use Mighty Guard as a name. Because Blue Mage that's really important, actually. Scrolling down, he also used Aqua Breath. This is actually, for me, one of the spells I recognize with Blue Mage the most is definitely Aqua Breath. Breaths in general, but Aqua Breath for me in particular, I have memories of this ability being super OP in some previous Final Fantasies, so it was one of the more important ones for me to see along with Mighty Guard and White Wind. And that was the end. That was the end of their description of Blue Mage. I'll do a separate video on it to get more of my thoughts out because we're already running long on time. So announcements were up next. Reminder of the FanFest. The next one's in Europe in February. Then we have March for Japan. And we're going to be getting more information about the expansion at those various times with several live letters in between. Let me take another sip of this because I feel like I'm about to go on a coughing fit. Okay. And then, of course, the bike and Tifa are now available on the Mog Station. I have my codes in my email for both of these as well. So looking forward to getting home and plugging those in so I can see everyone else who has them too. All right, sorry, I had to edit out a coughing fit because even with the water, it just wasn't holding it back. I'll probably have to do it a few more times before we wrap up. There's going to be the Encyclopedia Eorzea Volume 2. They sold out of it here at the North American Fan Fest. I have my copy, and we'll be taking a deeper dive into that on the YouTube channel over the next several months because it is a lot of content to get through, and I have to read it, so Ethis can kick my ass in Eorzea anyway. It's also going to go on sale Saturday, November 24th on the e-store, if I'm not mistaken. So that'll be available to the rest of everybody. They've already started a second printing. They already anticipate the full, selling out of them fully. So they are already working on printing the second round of them. We didn't talk about the next round of Volume 1, which I think also needs to happen because Volume 1, I think, isn't available on the website right now either. But at the very least, we have confirmation of the second volume getting more printing. New Primal's album. It's not even really an album. It's more like it's an album mixed in with some behind the scenes stuff. I'm actually going to be pre-ordering this as well because I really want this. Basically, they went on a tour throughout Korea, Japan, and a bunch of other places, and this is going to have some behind the scenes of them getting ready for their events. It's also going to have a bunch of songs of theirs and a bunch of footage coming out of the actual tour itself. So the live performances that are going to be available on the Blu-ray. It's going to be $54.99, it's just $55 for all that stuff. It's also going to come with Oblivion with gun vocals and Rise, the Primal's version for orchestrion roles in game. So please look forward to that because I am definitely looking forward to it. I love the Primals. I love the energy that they bring, even though it's just video game music. It's awesome video game music. So let's not kid ourselves. The concert, by the way, was insanely good. This is the best NA FanFest Primals concert we've had so far. Also, Koji, if you watch the lore panel, Koji had a thing regarding Lalafels in there, and as such, very quickly went in and decided that as long as it can be patched into the game, that he was going to include this incredibly long story regarding the fish, the vegetarian, and its appetite for Lalafels. So it's a lot of text, and it clearly doesn't even work on the screen, and really looking forward to seeing. By the way, the text stops here and continues on the actual item itself. So it's all part of one story. He said he's really looking forward to seeing other languages try and translate that and actually fit onto the page, which he doesn't think is going to be possible. So that was the last thing that happened at the actual thing. Let me scroll up normally. I'm probably just going to find some retweets. I took a bunch of pictures with people while I've been here, of course, so might end up scrolling into some of those, but it's no big deal. Oh, yeah, and then we get into concert stuff where, I just got a quick picture of Yoshida in an amazing, you can see Byakko at the bottom of his kimono right there. He's got a Byakko kimono that was custom made. He was singing the Byakko theme for the concert, and it was dope. Anyway, that's going to be it for our coverage of the Producer from the Letter Live Part 47, the overview and thoughts. Please put some comments. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of discussion about Blue Mage and the world visiting systems in particular in the comment section. And we'll be doing a lot of content on a lot of the stuff that came out of this, some follow-ups to some of the stuff we saw, the Q&A, talking about the press conference that I mentioned earlier, which is going to be a hilarious topic over the next several weeks. And so anyway, let me know what you thought of the letter from the Producer Live and of FanFest from Las Vegas overall. Anyway, thank you for watching. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and I will see you guys in the next video. Until then, take care.